Alright guys, welcome back. If you're joining me for the first time, this is going to be the Xubuntu installation. I don't know if you're supposed to call that Xubuntu or what, but I just call it Xubuntu. Um, I'm going to run through the virtual machine. In the first video we already went on how to create installation media and boot your computer. So let's go ahead and boot this up. Most Ubuntu based installations are going to be very similar in their installation because they all run some variation of a Ubiquity installer. If you go out there and start looking for Linux distributions and find something that you think looks good and you're interested in, there are major differences in all Linux distributions. So when you get in there, it could be different, but for Ubuntu-based distributions, you're pretty much good here. I personally like Arch Bang or Arch Linux. Arch Linux works great. It's definitely not for the beginner. Definitely a little more difficult to get anything done. Here, this is a nice thing I like about Xubuntu, is that Xubuntu, you can try it, which means we're going to run it live like we did in Linux Mint. It's going to boot you to the desktop and we can see it and play around and such. But I'm just going to go ahead and install. So we're going to install Xubuntu. Now the difference in all of these, I don't want to download any of this, but we need hard drive space, make sure we're plugged into power, and we're connected to the internet. We're all three. I don't feel like downloading updates while we're installing because that's going to take too long. And I'm going to go ahead and download MP3. So, continue here. All these Ubuntu-based distributions were created. We're going to erase disk and install Xubuntu, or if you have Windows installed right here next to it, it's going to ask you if you want to install alongside. You can choose that, resize the hard drive, and then have half Linux, half Windows, or 3/4 Linux, 1/4 Windows, or 90% Windows and a little Linux distribution because you're trying to figure it out. Either anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and erase disk and install Ubuntu because, again, this is virtual. Now, just like Linux Mint, it's going to create ext4 file system, and it's going to go ahead and install. And again, just the same as Mint. Now the difference in these is desktop environments. That is the difference in certain, I'd say the majority of the big Linux distributions. I'll put in John Doe here. Ubuntu-based Linux distributions. Ubuntu came with GNOME when it first came out, and GNOME was good. I like GNOME. It's a decent desktop environment. My issue, some people liked KDE. You can look these all up on the internet and kind of see what you like and what you think is interesting. But KDE, this right here is probably the best example because Ubuntu is the Linux distribution. Now, currently Ubuntu, like I said, it was coming with GNOME. Now it's coming with something called Unity. A lot of people, including myself, don't like Unity. I can't stand it. So they've created Linux distributions with different desktop environments, which means they function the same as Ubuntu, meaning the software manager. apt-get is installed, which we'll go over a little later. And everything about them is Ubuntu, but the desktop environment, the way things run and the way things look to you, are run off of each one's particular desktop environment. Xubuntu is made with XFCE. I believe, what else is there out there? Xubuntu with a K, Kubuntu. If you want to look that up, is run with KDE. You can check out KDE. I'm not really a fan of KDE, but I know a lot of people are hardcore KDE fans. And Linux Mint was created with their own desktop environment called Mate. I believe it was based off of GNOME 2 Legacy. I can't remember exactly, but the Mate is their own desktop environment, and the reason was they meant it. Let me go ahead and they did everything they could to make it look like Windows. Now, obviously, I put my start menu and stuff over here on the side, but it can be down here, and once you start and then go to your programs, and that's pretty much what Linux Mint was trying to accomplish, was to create a really friendly desktop that the person who's coming from Windows can understand, but has all the features as a full-fledged desktop environment. So we'll go back to this and let it install, and I will come back on the next video and show you guys what happens when it's done. And just like Linux Mint, when it's done, it's going to reboot, and it's going to tell you to remove your installation media. So you're going to pull your USB drive, your CD, or your DVD out, and then the computer will restart, and the next video will be showing you what that looks like.